Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Metaphysical podcast with Kellie and Gail. This is episode 48.
Wow.
Yep, 48.
Doesn't feel like that many.
I'm going to let Kellie lead the show today.
Only after you talk about our changes because I know what you told me and I already forgot.
All right, so there's a couple changes that are going to be happening to the podcast. One, we're only going to be streaming it on YouTube starting next week.
Very
But
cool.
we will post it on all our social media afterwards with links to it, but we're going to stream it live just to YouTube. And we're also changing the time because 5 o'clock Central Standard Time is 3 o'clock on the West
Well,
Coast. So we're going to move it to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time starting next Wednesday. So we're going to try that time slot out for a while and we will see how that goes.
that might
Welcome
work
to our
better for a lot
viewers.
of people. Yeah, that may work better. It may not. I don't know.
Well, we're going to try it out. I mean, there's never going to be a time zone that's good for everybody,
Right.
because everybody's in different places. But, we're going to try a couple hours later and see how that works. If you have suggestions for what time you'd like to see the podcast, again, feel free to reach out to us. And again, it'll just be streaming live starting on YouTube next week.
Right. Right. And I think that might be a little bit better. Hopefully it is. Um, I know some of our viewers are kind of hit or miss
Mhm.
because their schedules change from week to week. But see what happens. Um, I want to start today by revisiting something we've already discussed on this podcast, but there is a lot of back and forth, at least lately, that I've noticed again
Mhm.
within the spiritual community over whether or not to charge money for using what is a gift.
Mhm.
Um, my point of view is that if your gift is being a medium or being psychic or being a natural born healer, that's really not any different than someone who has a gift of being an athlete and makes bazillions of dollars playing ball, or someone who is a gifted author and has a bestseller, or someone who is a musician and becomes a bazillionaire. It's everyone has gifts, and I really honestly think we are given those gifts to use in our lives,
Mhm.
whether to make money or to make a difference or whatever you want to use your gift for. But there are many, many of us out here. This is what I do.
Mhm.
This is all I do. So, yes, I am going to charge for readings or healings or whatever. Um, I don't know why people have a thing with that. But sometimes they do.
Mhm.
And it came up again for me lately from someone who does the same thing
Mhm.
and has decided not to charge because she has another job. She calls it her job.
Mhm.
Uh, and you do you, whatever feels right to you. But I can tell you, you don't have a gift so that you can use it for free and starve and become homeless. That is not why you have this gift. So there, I've said it.
Well, I think that sometimes I think people get hung up on the concept of money per se,
Right,
but really it's just an exchange of energy, and the way that we exchange energy is called money. And
right.
so, it's just putting it, I've just always put it in different terms. So, I think that people just have to be themselves, whatever that means. Not everyone is always going to agree.
Right. But if you choose to not charge, that doesn't mean that everyone who chooses to charge is wrong.
Mhm.
You have your own path. Everyone has their own path. And what is right for you is not right for someone else. So the part of that I really have a problem with is when people start trying to make people who charge feel like they're wrong
Mhm.
for making a living. And that's the thing. It's kind of a judgmental thing when someone says, I don't do that, so it's wrong that you do that.
Mhm.
That's coming from ego. That's not coming from a spiritual place. And I find it very concerning when it comes out of the mouth of quote unquote spiritual people. So, you have to pick and choose. The other thing I had a client ask me
Mhm.
is, and we were going to talk about this last week, but believe me, you didn't want to see me last week. So we saved it. A client asked me how friends and family reacted to my gifts.
Mhm.
And in short, they didn't. You know, um, I come from a very non-communicative group of people.
Mhm.
And, I'm sure they thought something was very wrong with me, but it does run in my family. So it's not like they were surprised. I
Mhm.
really don't think they really thought about it at all. Um, but they also do not attach any importance to it. It's sort of like it's not right, it's not wrong. They are very, very, very indifferent. Um, I know you had a dramatically different
Mhm.
thing with you. And most of my friends, I lost friends over it. Quite frankly, I just lost them. They just faded away. Um, and some of my family did that as well. But overall, they were very indifferent. They were certainly not supportive, but they just kind of ignored me in general to begin with. So, that was the way it was. But
Well,
what happened with you?
I've talked about my family a lot and how they dealt with it when I was growing up, but when my gifts all started to really come back or I started to pay attention to them again, I had a lot of people test me. Like,
Yeah,
I always got the people who wanted readings, and it's like, "Well, what do you wanna know about?" "Nothing. Let's just see what comes up and what you've got. Let's test you
right,
and your abilities." And I had friends who would ask me questions that they already knew the answers to because they wanted to see how I would answer them. And so for a period, I got really quiet. Um, and it took me a while to work through that. But now it's just like, you know what? I don't need to be tested. I mean, I know what my gifts are. I know what my abilities are. I know what I'm capable of. And I know what I'm not capable of. So if someone asks me to do something and I know I can't do it, I'll say, you know what? That's not something that I enjoy. Well, mostly I can do most of everything, but there are certain things I don't enjoy doing. So I will refer them to other people. And they're like, well, I really want you to do it. I'm like, you're going to have a much better experience if you do this with that person because this is not where my heart and my passion is.
right. Yeah, I think people are always surprised when I know a couple of different mediums
Mhm.
who will absolutely refuse to look at anyone's Akashic records or past lives. They will not do it.
Mhm.
And then you've got other people like me, I'll pretty much do anything.
Mm,
But that's because I've got that conduit.
mhm,
It's open. I can look and sometimes things come up to me that I didn't ask for.
mhm,
I had a recent past life reading, and all of a sudden, someone's grandmother jumps up.
mhm,
And I'm like, okay, we're going this direction. Now that's not past life. Thank you. Um, so it's a little bit different. I had some people try to test me early on, and I was told, don't give them any information. They don't need it. And that's what I said. I said, they're saying you don't need this information because you're not going to trust it.
mhm.
And they kind of got a little weirded out. And then I followed that with, but your grandmother says the bracelet you've been looking for is in your sock drawer. And they were, what? And later on, they found the bracelet they've been looking for in the sock drawer. But that was the only information they wanted these people to have. And it was a couple, and they just would not say anything. There's a bug in here. Um, Nothing of importance other than the bracelet is in the sock drawer. And I found that very interesting.
I think the hard part for me is that I can pretty much read anybody, even somebody who doesn't want to be read.
Right.
I'll just, because I'm such an open conduit that, like, if I'm just in your energy field and I'm paying attention, I'll just start to get information. I don't normally do that. Like, I close everything down. As my friend says to me, Spirit says you have a closed sign over your head. You may want to open that again. Because I do while I'm working at my day job. I, try not to be that open to things. But, it's hard when it's, and I don't know what other word to use because I'm trying not to make this sound like I'm in my ego because I'm not. It's just there are certain things that are just easy for me.
Yeah.
It's just one of my gifts. It just, which is why I gave myself the no nonsense intuitive, is because it comes through so fast with like not a lot of fluff around it.
Right. Right. And from time to time, I will get someone's guide, someone that I'm reading, that they will just draw it out. And it's like they give one little bit of information at a time. And I find myself mentally going, will you please hurry up? You know, and other times it's just like boom, 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 boom. Um, but it is usually very quick. Um, have you found that you kind of throw people off in readings? They're expecting you to go down one direction and you like make a left turn that they're not maybe ready for?
Well, it's interesting because I do readings one of two ways. One, I'll just give them whatever information comes through first. Like I was doing readings on my friend's podcast the other day, and I'm like, oh, I want to do it this way. I want to tell people their first chakra that pops that's blocked, and then I'll pick a card. And people thought that was so fun because I haven't done that in a long time. Like, I can look at people's energy and say, "This is the area you really need to focus on. This is why." And then the card I picked went with that. But I have an example of what you were talking about. I have a friend who has to have surgery, and it was supposed to be today. And then they called and said, "No, it's going to be tomorrow." And she was really upset by it. And I'm like, well, two things. One, they're not done energetically reconstructing it yet, so that your surgery is going to be less tomorrow. And two, you're supposed to have a different doctor. That's why your surgery is tomorrow. And I wasn't even like paying attention. Is like, there it is. Okay, I'll say this to her. And she's like, thank you. That's very reassuring. So sometimes when I'm in a conversation with people, I'll just work in information. It's probably that therapist background in me is that I know how to say it in a way that it doesn't sound like it's necessarily coming psychically.
Right, right, right.
So,
Yeah. I've had to do that a couple of times as well. But the conflict to me between doing this now and the way I was trying to fit in with society at large before, it got truly so painful that
mhm,
I had to cut a whole bunch of people loose. And it was, I'm that kind of friend that normally, if I don't hear from someone in a day or two, couple of days, I check on them.
mhm,
And I stopped that. And what happened was amazing. There were people that just forgot I existed, like
mhm.
a whole bunch of people just, forgot I ever existed. And I think about that from time to time. And it's really interesting because I
Who,
fought really
who's your
hard.
friend? Who's your friend who's visiting you right now who you keep looking over at?
Oh, there's a couple of beings here, but there's there are people that I never thought would be out of my life
Mhm,
that are completely out of my life.
yeah.
And when you do that, half of my family as well, I might add. Um, but when you do that, I tell people when I'm teaching,
Mhm.
you have to make a decision. You are either all in or don't do it because it does sort of consume you. I if anyone was, secretly taping me when I'm outside, they'd lock me up because I talk to my guides, I talk to angels, I talk to the spirits that are on my property
Mhm.
constantly. And that's something that when I was a kid and I did that, it got me sent to the principal's office. It got me reprimanded. And I think that was probably the hardest thing to step back into
Mhm.
when I really started saying, okay, I'm not hiding anymore, fine. Because for years I was a hermit. I didn't talk to anybody, I didn't see anybody. I was
Mhm.
content being a hermit. But you go through stages in your life. And when I came out of that, it was like, you know what? I don't miss that person. I haven't thought about that person in months. And it was really interesting to me. But I think we all do that,
Mhm.
regardless of what path we're on. But when you make a decision that you want to walk a spiritual journey, it's it's different. It's different.
I want to encourage the people who are watching us live. If you have any questions or any feedback or anything comes up that we're talking about, please feel free to interject in the comment section. We can see your comments in real time and respond in real time as well. Um, and I'll just put this out there. So, August is a really tough month for me,
Yep.
and then this week and next week are really hard for me. And I've talked about this briefly before. Is that my parents both transitioned a day apart, 2 years apart, and their anniversaries are the anniversary of their passings are next week. And the interesting thing is, being a medium is I've always been able to feel them. And I've always been able to still feel them really close by, or they've come to visit me a lot. But it's really interesting this year, and we were talking about this before the show, is that I have no sense of them, which is very strange to me.
I think sometimes those on the other side, I really think there's a school on the other side. I really do. And I think sometimes people we've lost kind of, they're still working on their souls
Mhm.
on the other side. So sometimes when we don't feel them, it's not necessarily because they're not on the other side. It
Mhm.
means that they're either busy over there doing something else, or they're giving us space to be without them.
Mhm.
And sometimes I think, I'm pretty sure if my grandmother could reached across the veil and slapped me when she transitioned, she probably would have, because there were years after she transitioned that I would still call her old phone number.
Mhm.
I would still, you know, when I still lived in that state, I would still drive by her house.
Mhm.
I was just consumed with mourning her. And finally, one night I had a dream and she said, you know what? Um, Enough.
Mhm.
And I need to go do things. You need to go do things. Let's leave it here.
So
And
one
I didn't sense her.
Yeah, one of the viewers just wrote, it's all relatable for the most part, with the exception I don't completely understand the totality of my gifts. And I think that that's something that happens because as we get older too, and as we move into our gifts change and shift with us. So it's always going to be a learning process. I know mine still change a lot. Like the basic things I can do are the same, but
Right.
sometimes information comes in new ways, or new guides come in, or I create mandalas in a very different way. Like I was creating mandalas for the Lionsgate this past week, and it's really interesting because they kept saying draw a dodecahedron. I'm like, I don't know how to draw a dodecahedron. So I was watching all these videos on how to draw a dodecahedron. I'm like, that is just way too complicated. There's got to be an easier way. So there was 3 pictures in this series. I drew the first picture, and then the second picture, when I backed away from it, there's a dodecahedron in the middle. a much easier way of drawing it as well. So I'm like, oh, okay. So sometimes you just need to get out of your head and
Yeah,
how you think it's supposed to look and what
yeah.
how you think you're supposed to do it and just let the process unfold of how it's really meant to be.
Yeah, sometimes that process can become frustrating
Mhm.
and we lose patience. I don't know anyone who is truly content to just keep waiting and keep waiting and keep waiting for things to happen. And sometimes that's what we do. That was thunder again. Um, it is monsoon season where I am. So if I am suddenly gone, it's because we've been struck by lightning again. We've had two different transformers in my area get blown up by lightning in the last week. So been exciting. I do love a good thunderstorm though. It's just sometimes growth is not perceptible at all.
Mhm.
We're all growing and changing, and our gifts grow and change with us, and we don't realize it. So we start feeling stuck because we're not realizing the progress we've already made. And one day, all of a sudden, you realize, oh, wow, look how far I've come.
Mhm.
And it kind of sneaks up on you. So I don't know why they wanted me to say that, other than someone watching needs to hear that. You're not really stuck. Even when you feel like you are, you're really not. Um, Growth on a spiritual journey tends to be kind of chaotic. Sometimes you move like light years from where you were, and then you stay there for like, a long time. And then you slingshot forward again.
Yeah. And I think that there's a reason they call it growing pains.
Hmm.
They don't call it growing fun. They
No,
call
it's not fun sometimes. Most of the time, it's not fun.
because it's about stretching and growing and moving into a different perception, because really all growing pains are is learning something new and seeing things from a different perspective.
Yeah, and sometimes life changes propel us forward in ways we never could have dreamed. I know I spent years trying to shut down, trying to hide, trying to
Mhm,
be as small as I possibly could because of the situation and people around me.
mhm,
And it was hard for me to come out of that. It's like I went forward so far, and then all of a sudden I was back in a shell,
mhm.
like I had just started again. But I think we also do that periodically throughout life. All of us do. We may not realize it like that, but we do. We
Mhm.
always go back and revisit things.
So, can we switch gears a little bit? Because I know
Yes.
one of the other questions we had this week, and I hope the person in Florida is safe because they're also having thunder there as well.
Yep.
One of the other questions that came
Questions?
up in the last week was crystals.
Yes.
And for myself, like I always usually if I'm going out in public and things like that, I always try and take black tourmaline with me. But I always do a combination of black tourmaline and selenite. So black tourmaline is about protection and warding off negativity, and selenite is pure white light. And I find that that combination together works really, really well.
You might want to add a red agate to that. Somebody just said, I don't know why.
Well,
Um,
in the Orgo necklaces that I kind of do in conjunction with this guy in Croatia. He makes amazing necklaces and he's kind enough to put some of my mandalas in them as well. But there's a whole bunch of crystals in the back.
yeah.
And so I always try and wear one of those every day because then I'm covered with a variety of different crystals, not to mention it has gold, silver, and copper coil in it. So it's just a lot of energy. I had a friend of mine wanted one, so I gave permission to use a design for her. And I'm like, "You tried to sleep in it?" She was up all night and didn't know why she couldn't sleep. Like, I would take the necklace off,
Yeah.
maybe not sleep with
Yeah. Yeah. I I have people ask me all the time. I taught a crystal grid class at one time, and people were saying, I can't afford to buy all those rocks. They are very expensive. And I tell people, start with a clear quartz.
Mm-hmm.
You can substitute any other crystal with a clear quartz. There are some that are more economical.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, you can find rose quartz or agates that are usually fairly inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about it is your intention.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had people that came to that crystal grid, I can't talk either. See, it's contagious. The crystal grid class. And they only had, all they had was 3 crystals. Now I had a bajillion of them here because I was preparing for that grid class. But they were so concerned because all they had was 3 clear quartz crystals. And you can do a grid with 3 crystals that are clear quartz. You can do it. It really, what matters most is that you like the crystal.
Mm-hmm.
There have been some times I've picked up a crystal and I'm like, I don't like that one. And, you know, put it back down and grab something else. So learn to know what resonates with you. Sometimes people, when they're starting out, they just grab whatever. Oh, that's a pretty color. And it needs to mean a little bit more than, you know, oh, this one's cheap, I'll buy that. It has to resonate with you. So put a little bit of thought into your crystals.
I grabbed the Daily Crystal Inspiration deck because they said we're going to pick a few cards for people who are watching us as to what would be helpful crystals. But we all know that my favorite crystal is labradorite.
Yes.
Can't have enough labradorite. So if you guys have any questions about crystals, we're happy to answer them. But I'm kind of curious to see what messages spirits have for us with crystals today.
That's
So
going to be interesting.
we haven't done this yet in the show. We haven't actually picked cards live. So this one popped out. Black kyanite, set a strong boundary. So very similar to black tourmaline.
Right.
Okay, let's see what the next one is. So again, black, we want to be grounded. We want to be present. Appetite, get out of your comfort zone.
There we go.
So we got black and blue. Let's see what the third one is. So blue is also, go ahead.
Now, when I was a kid, I would pick crystals that were like a rainbow. I would pick a rainbow. I would do a red, a yellow, you know, a green, a blue. And I found that that helped me get started in what I liked, because you really can't work effectively with something you don't like.
And interesting, the third card is Sunstone. Take pleasure in the things you do.
Yeah. That's really important.
But it's also orange, and orange is all about being who you are in the world. So we have grounding, we have using your voice, your sense of will, your sense of expression, and being who you're fully meant to be in the world. So those are kind of cool cards for all of us for this week.
They are. Those are cool. We have a question about cleansing crystals.
I usually put them on selenite.
That works. Yeah. If you have a large piece of selenite that your crystals will sit on, that is a really effective way.
I actually have selenite candle holders, like for tea lights. I actually put the crystals in the candle holder.
That's a great idea. I have some of those. Yeah.
It's really cool because then, like, if I buy a new necklace or something, a new pendant to wear, I'll put it in there for like 24 hours to make sure all the energy is cleared off from like traveling to get to me. And then I find it's usually happier.
Yeah. Yeah, you can use water and set it on a windowsill or outside under a full moon. That's something that people have always done. You can use salt, but be careful what stone you're putting salt in, because many of them have a high wouldn't say really water content, but they do not play well with salt. And you can actually, don't do that with selenite. Don't put selenite anywhere near water. It's just, you have to kind of know what stones you're working with. The easiest thing really is to charge them on a selenite plate
Or a full moon.
or a
Put
full.
all your crystals out on a full moon.
Yeah.
So, and I think sometimes too, it's like people talk about clearing oracle decks, and there's all kinds of ways to do that. You can also sage your crystals. You can just run sage over your crystals. You can also do like you would clear a deck. You could put the crystal in your hand and blow on it, which is more of a shamanic way of clearing things. So
Yeah.
I think you just have to find what works best for you or what you're the most comfortable with.
Yeah.
So you can put them in moonlight. Be careful what crystals you put in salt. You can put them on selenite. You can put it in your hand and blow through your hand. So all different kinds of ways to clear them. I think it's just gonna, or sage them.
Yeah.
There's all different kinds of ways you can do it. So, I think each person is different and each person's frequency is different. So what works for me may not work for you. So I
Right.
always try and give several different options as opposed to locking people into how I do things.
Right. And someone's asking about sunlight. You can use sunlight if you are a sun. I think there are two kinds of people. There are moon people and sun people. If you are a sun person, you can use the sun. The big thing again is your intention. If you set them out, be careful how long you leave them out, and do not put them in a glass container if you are putting them out in the sun. Don't do it like for all day. If I were going to put something out in the sunlight, I would do it in the early morning, right when the sun's coming up, and I would bring them back in before noon, before the height of the sun, simply because crystals are very sensitive to UV light, and you really don't want to, mess with their energy. If you have a piece of jewelry or crystals that belong to someone else, please clear them before you bring them into your house or immediately after you bring them into your house. I can't tell you how many times I've had paranormal calls about somebody's all of a sudden in my kitchen and they've got a stack of crystals here. This girl had a copper pyramid and the crystals on the table and wondered why that person was in her kitchen. Oh, hello. You have to clean them. Please do yourself a favor and clean them. And if they're fully charged, really clean them.
I think another way that you could do it, depending on how you feel about it, is you could bury them in dirt for a while too and ask the earth to clear them for you and then take them out of the dirt after an hour or 2 hours or something like that. You don't want to leave them buried that long.
No. You can clear your place that you live by putting crystals in the corners. I usually use either black obsidian or black tourmaline for that, and it will draw all the negativity out of the room.
So I live in an all glass building. I've talked about this before. And during the height of the pandemic, the parking lot right outside my window was where they were doing all the testing for COVID. So there was hundreds and hundreds of cars every day. And I was working from home because where I work, we went to Zoom for therapy because no one could be on site. And I literally had to build a wall. It was black tourmaline, selenite, rose quartz across all the windows in my whole apartment, which is not good because I live across from the elevator, which would then cause the elevator to go out. So I had to be really careful with how I balanced energy because the elevator used to go out here. You remember when I moved in here, it went out like every week.
Yep.
So I finally have grids specifically so the elevator won't go out, and then I have grids across the windows.
They're saying right now, you can use crystals for anything that you want. Be sure that's what you really want. And they're reminding me of someone a very long time ago who was looking for love in her life. So she got a little bundle of very tiny little raw garnets, and she tied them up in a handkerchief with a bow, and she put it underneath her bed. That was supposed to be unconditional love. That was her unconditional love spell. The next day, she found a stray dog and she was pregnant. Be careful. what you must be specific when you are using crystals to perform any sort of a ritual. You must be absolutely specific.
That's funny though.
It was really funny. I laughed. She was not amused. I thought it was hilarious.
I have the ability with crystals that they talk to me. Like I have some friends who own crystal stores, and I used to go to expos, and I would move the crystals around on her table. She said I could, and I would make grids, and she's like, "Oh, that feels so good." Or she's like, "I just got this stone. What do you get from it?" And I would tell her, and she's like, "Oh my God, that's so true." So sometimes they're just fun to play with and see what you get. Like I always know when a stone resonates with me because it won't leave my hand. Like I know
Yeah,
what stones are supposed to come home with me because I can't put them down. There's
right.
other stones I can pick up and play with, and I'm like, "Yeah." But there's certain ones where I'm just like, I didn't think I was buying a crystal, but they all wanted to talk to me. And then I went through a phase, and I have bowls and bowls of spheres
Uh-huh.
because I was trying to recreate the gateway of Atlantis with the 144 spheres. So I'm well more than halfway there. And then I've never particularly liked crystal skulls, but I had to have 13 of them because I had to build the 13 crystal skulls to unlock all the information. So now I have all these crystal skulls I don't know what to do with. But it's really interesting. And I knew this guy who had one of the big crystal
Yeah, I
spheres.
know someone who does too.
And he used to have people at the shows go up and put your third eye on the third eye. And I'm like, oh, okay. Not a good idea. So
No, it really was not.
I saw the entire universe. It was wild. Like I just got downloaded with all this information. So I think that it's also important, like if you get a feeling from picking up a crystal and it doesn't feel right for you, put it down. It just means it's not the right stone for you and it's not something that you're supposed to work with.
Yeah, a lot of people that have come through my house, I don't like people handling any of my stuff really. But I had just done a crystal grid class and I had a big glass bowl with leftover,
Hmm.
crystals. And someone came in and stuck their hand in that bowl and went, ouch, something bit me. I'm like, I promise you, there's nothing in that bowl but rocks. But she swears something better. So, don't talk yourself into making a purchase or picking up a crystal. If your first instinct is no, then don't do it.
Mhm.
Even if you're working with a grid and you need a particular crystal, it is better to substitute that crystal with a clear quartz that you feel good about than
Mhm.
to talk yourself into the right type of rock that you don't feel good about because it
Now,
can really mess with you.
let's talk about, and I know we're probably going to go a little over today, but let's talk about each chakra has 7 layers. So, everyone says, well, each chakra is these specific colors. Well, so even in your root chakra, the color's red or black or whatever for the crystal, but it could also be pink because
Right.
maybe your heart part of your grounding chakra is off. So I think when you're thinking about chakras and things like that, it's what crystals feel best for you. Maybe not, they might not be traditional colors, but it might be that level of that chakra that really needs help. So just honor that and trust yourselves. Um,
Always go with your gut, always.
so just to recap, um, we are just going to be streaming on YouTube starting next week. And the show will be at 7 p.m. Central Time. So I don't know how that translates for the rest of you, but we're going to make it a couple hours later than we have been. Hopefully, more people will be available to be present while we're doing that. And then we'll share the link after we've done it live on all our social media in case anyone wants to watch it that way as well. So we thank you all for participating today. If you have questions, you can reach out to either one of us. You can put comments on the YouTube channel. I do read those and we do respond to those. And we will see you guys all again next week at 7 p.m. Central.
Yep, 7. Please, if you get any value at all from this show, please share it. We really appreciate people who do share it. So please do that.
And like it and give us a thumbs up on our YouTube page.
And subscribe.
Subscribe as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you guys all again next week.
Bye.